Welcome back to Worth the Effort Woodworking. If any of y'all follow my Instagram or Facebook feeds or anything like that, you know I work a lot of art markets, probably well over 100 a year. And while you put a lot of effort into the large bowls, containers, and stuff like that, well, some of them will take you up to 2 years to finish because you do them in stages. You know, not everybody's going to be buying a $200, $300, $100 item on impulse. So you have to have something that you can batch out fairly quickly, don't put too much time in, but can make a decent profit on. For impulse buys that you can sell people when they come over. And we're coming up on the holiday season right now, so I thought I'd show you a bunch of other small items that you can do, teach you a few tips and techniques along the way, show you how different tools work and that kind of stuff, and maybe you can make some stuff that you can give out to family, friends, batch them out, or even sell it on local holiday markets like we do. So, those of y'all that watched our channel a little while realize that I'm not in my shop right now. I'm at my dad's place. And he has an item that he sells quite a bit of lately. So I'm going to introduce him and let him show you how he makes one of his more popular selling items. Howdy, I'm Jack, Sean's dad. Today we want to show you what I've been making recently that I enjoy is mushrooms. You saw some pictures of me coming in. We've got some fresh boat art that came down from Harvey. I've got some elm that came from my yard. And I've got some mesquite that someone gave me. So what we end up doing to make the mushrooms is cut limbs down, and I look for oddities. Like in this particular case here, you can see it's got a kind of a funny shape to the top. So when I looked at the limbs, I tried to find something kind of odd so I could cut. Whereas in this one, it's just a straight cut from the limb. Okay, this is a piece of elm that came from my yard. Notice it's got a kind of an odd shape to it. So I'm going to end up making a mushroom from this section and from this section so I can get this unique portion here. This portion in here will just give me a standard looking mushroom. So here we go. Here's a piece of boat art that came down from the Harvey storm here in San Marcos. You can see I've got a kind of a funny odd end here, so I'm going to make the top of the mushroom right there, and then it's the normal mushroom down in here. These are the three I just cut. So you can see this is going to make an odd kind of shaped cap. This will also make somewhat of an odd shaped cap. And this will make a sort of a normal looking cap. We're at the lathe. This is our lot of blanks. Here's one of the blank, and what we're going to do is put a tendon on it. We're setting this up between centers. I'll put the tendon on this end. This will be the top of the mushroom, so you want to end up determining where in here you want that center of that cap to be. So that when we put the tendon on, that'll be the center. I turn the center with a tool that I made from a square bar. It's got an angle to the top, straight here with an angle down, so that when I put it down, I will get the dovetail that matches my chuck.
when I'm cutting my tenon, I want to make a slight indent here so that I've got a real good flat surface. So it's slightly going to be a little deeper right at that point than out here, so that when my chuck comes on, I get a good contact all the way around. If I come out and do it this way, and it's a little fat right here, then my chuck does not make good contact with the wood. As you can see, when I'm centering this one from my tailstock, it is slightly off-centered so that I end up getting a nicer looking cap on my mushroom. Just a quick review. We cut our blanks with a bandsaw however we wanted to get them to get a good shape. We put it on the lathe between centers to do the tenon. I really like to do it in stages where I leave this one set up and do 10, 15, 20 of them so that I'm not switching back and forth. We're ready for the next step. Before we go on to it though, I would like to provide a suggestion that if your blanks are green in any way, and you've got quite a few of them, if you can't get to them right away, you might want to park them in a plastic trash bag or something to keep them from drying out and checking on you. Our next step is we want to mount the blank that we've did between centers with the tenon on it into our chuck. I use dovetail chucks, dovetail jaws. I just prefer them over the ones that have the grippers on them, but they're both good. They're both good jaws. I just prefer the dovetail. With the dovetail, you want to, as with the other one also, you want to get the chuck, the blank, flat up against the chuck so that the front edge of the jaws are resting against that flat surface that you cut, so that when you tighten it down, there's a contact all the way around with the wood, and you want to go and look and make sure there's not any gaps in there, and there's not. That way this thing has good the jaws have a good grip on it, so it's not going to move back and forth and come out. With green wood especially, you want to get it pretty tight. And there we go, we're ready to go. Before we start cutting, I would like to talk a little bit about the wood you're using and the shape of your mushroom and what perhaps some of your limitations are. This is a piece of boat art that is fairly green, so it's got a lot of moisture in it, and if I leave it too thick, it's going to crack. And if you'll notice on the bottom of this one, I had to leave it fairly thick and it cracked on me. But you'll notice my top didn't crack. The reason it didn't is when I shaped the top of my mushroom, I didn't go way up high. I kind of made it a little flatter so that I could go inside later on and scoop it out, so get a fairly thin uniform shape here, so it allowed it to move without cracking. Even when you try to do the best you can, this one, it cracked right where the pith was, but it's still, everything else stayed nice, and I was lucky that the base didn't crack. So what we want to do with green wood is not get your dome of your mushroom too high so that you can still get in it and make it a uniform shape. Now, as we cut this, you can see it's very uneven, so I'm going to be cutting air and wood and air and wood. So you want to go and take slow cuts and sort of cut the shadow off as you're going through. So I will start a little bit here and show you what I mean. I would also like to suggest, when you're doing this in a shape, if you would notice, when I came in, I wasn't just moving this portion, I was moving my entire body to form that shape. And in doing that, that tends to create a very nice, smooth transitions as you're doing it, instead of out here you might get a jagged transition. So when you transition this way, just move it with your body. And I'll give you one last cut, show you what I mean. You can watch my body move. So I'm moving my body around it instead of moving this. And there's my shape for my top. The next thing we want to do is begin to remove some of the bulk here in the middle. And here we go. Okay, we have removed some of the bark around the stem, and I cut into it just enough to where I've got just a little bit more of the edge of the mushroom cap that I wanted right here. And now we need to remove the material underneath the cap, and I do that with a parting tool. So with the parting tool, I'm going to come in and just sort of scrape it out to where I'm going to keep doing this until I get a uniform edge for my cap all the way around. Then I'll use a hollowing tool to hollow the rest of it out. So here we go. Now at this point, as you can see, I've got a fairly uniform edge for my mushroom cap all the way around. And again, that was obtained by going with my parting tool and edging straight on in and getting it. At this point, I've got a good edge, so I need to get rid of this bulk in here. And I will do that initially with my spindle gouge, and then I will go with an Ellsworth hollowing tool. At this point, we have removed enough of the material bulk underneath the cap that I think it will be all right and dry uniformly and not crack. In doing that, I was using two tools. One was my spindle gouge. The other was what I call an Ellsworth grinding tool, an Ellsworth scraper. As you can see with this Ellsworth grinding tool, it's sort of at an angle, undercut all the way around, so that way when I'm in there, just to explain, when I'm in there, I can slightly turn it this way a little bit. So now I've got almost a negative rate scraper here on the edge. So I'm almost shearing it off in a negative rate scraping mode. If I turn it slightly this way and work against this side, I'm getting a slight shearing scraping addition. So that's why I like this shape, that I can get in there and kind of shape it without it grabbing too much. Even with this, it will grab some, but I like the tool. At this point, we have a decision to make of how we want the stem to be. There are two stems that I have, two stem styles that I work with. One I will call an onion, and one I will call a palm tree. In the palm tree, I tend to leave the bark on it and sort of undercut it and just keep on going up this way. Sort of like you're seeing now, but a lot thinner. And typically when I do that, I've got a longer piece here and I've got more room here to leave the bark on. In this case, I'm going to make my preferred base, which is like an onion. So I'm going to create my base of my onion, and I will show you how it's done. I will make a bark one on another, a palm tree on another one, but this one will be an onion shape. So here we go. I would like to stop for a second and explain a couple of my cuts that I'm doing right now in this shape, but I'm going to turn it on and do it real quickly and then we'll come back. Now I want to get a shape through here, but I also want to get a shape that I don't have to sand very much. It will be nice and smooth and not have any jaggedness. This is spindle turning, so you always want to be going downhill. So in this case, I'm coming in here right in a bevel and going just straight on through. But somewhere in the middle here, in this area, I'm reaching a point to where I'm beginning to go uphill, not downhill. And I don't want, and if I keep going, I'm going to get at some raggedness. So I can come back downhill and use the edge of my spindle gouge as almost like a skew and just scrape it on out so I'm still going downhill so I get that nice surface finish. I'll do it one more time. And if you will notice in here, I'm getting all this tear out because right there I'm beginning to go uphill. So now at that point, I want to go slightly above it and just using my edge of my spindle gouge is almost like a skew, and come back downhill. Come back downhill and I get a very nice smooth surface. The next step in my process is sanding. This is kind of wet wood, so it's going to sand a little different than dry wood, but I still need to do it. If you remember, I left a little nib here on the end that I want to take off so that I can get rid of any broken fibers there at the final cut and get rid of any residual tool marks that I might have. It is now sanded. I went through, started at 220 because my tooling was good enough that I didn't need to go any coarser grit to 220, and then I went to 320, and that's sufficient. And I use it just to get rid of any tool marks at the top and get rid of that nib. Now I want to part it off. I want this to be able to sit flat. So I need to sort of somewhat slightly undercut it when I part it off. Then I'll get it down as thin as I think I can get it without it sort of wobbling. And then I'll either use a saw to cut it off or use a thin blade parting tool to part it off. One of the two. So here we go. digress for a second and end up saying this is a 1/4 inch drill from Harbor Freight. I go through them. They cost about 40 bucks, 35 if you get that 20% discount. They last me about a year, but I really like them for a couple of reasons. One, they're fairly lightweight. They're variable speed, so they go at different speeds. Plus, they go forward and back. So now I can end up, whichever way I'm turning, I can always get my sander going against direction. So I really like it. Plus, it has a finger tightening so that I don't have to have a key to do it. I can just do it with my hand. So that is really nice. When it comes time to finish, you can, I typically will seal them all with sanding sealer. And if I'm only using sanding sealer, I'll probably put a second coat on it, let that dry, and then just polish it up with the Beal system. At the same time though, I like to color quite a few of them. I won't ever color the boat art because it's yellow and the colors kind of mess up, and usually boat art is pretty neat in itself. But I have found that if you color a good portion of them, it tends to draw people into the booth. They pick it up and look at it, and many times they'll have a favorite color that draws attention. Again, the sole purpose here is something that's fairly inexpensive for us to do. We can do a lot of them. They draw attention and they get us a little bit of extra cash. It's something less expensive in the booth that's more of a spot sale. Okay. I have used trans tint a lot. I like that. And I have all those colors. I've also tried and liked the chestnut colors. I've also used some of the artisan colors. The artisan and the chestnut, you use them as is. With the trans tint, you dilute them down with alcohol, and I have my own little bottles I keep separate. I have found that a good way to apply the colors is these little makeup wedges. I like them. And the way I do it is I just put a little bit of color on the end of the wedge and put it on. I like to seal the mushrooms with sanding sealer. I typically will use the Zinsser shellac and dilute it 50-50 with alcohol. And I use these little disposable brushes that I can get at Harbor Freight. We just got the first coat on. I'm going to let it dry for about an hour. Then we're going to put a second coat on and let that dry for a couple hours. And then we go to the buffing system. This is a real nice buffing system I've got here. It's called a one-way buffing system. It's my second lathe, and I typically just leave my buffing wheel on it until I need the lathe. This is my Triple E buffing wheel. Charge it up a little bit, and that's the first one I buff. Lightly let it buff all the way around. I'll take my second one that I'm doing here and lightly buff it. what I'm doing. Then I will change the wheel to the triple E. That was the triple E. Now I'm going to go to white diamond. I'm sorry. Lightly charge it up. And then go back to lightly buffing it. Okay, we're back from the buffing wheel, and let me show you some differences here. This is just a sanding sealer is all it is, and you can see here's a green one and the one that's not been buffed. These are the two Osage orange ones, and you can see how they're somewhat a lot more shiny than the non-buffed one. And then I've got some natural wood that I didn't color. And that is just sanding sealer. Nothing but sanding sealer and the Beal buffing system. Isn't that really nice looking? And that one is one of those palm tree styles. That's also a palm tree style. And this is a palm tree style without the bark on it. Hope you enjoyed this one, and please go make some and sell some.
So there you go, a bunch of mushrooms. And the thing is, you don't do a few at a time, you do them at a dozen at a time. That way when you take them out to your market, you have 20 or 30, all different colors. As people are walking by, they'll see the colors, they'll recognize it's a mushroom. They'll at least come in and talk to you. It's amazing how many of these you sell to just an individual walking by that wasn't really looking for woodworking, but that's a little dust collector that they just got to put on their mantelpiece. Plus, you sell bowls and stuff like that. People putting a bowl out in the middle of their table, they might put a few of these around that bowl as a centerpiece. It works out really well, and it's bonus sales that don't take too much time to make and just boost your income. So if you like this video, please like, favorite, subscribe, do all those other social medias. Visit us at wortheffort.com, where we have a lot of swag like t-shirts and hats, and we'll have some stickers up in the future, and there's a lot of other ways you can support us. Just visit our support page. And I want you to remember one last thing. It is always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others. Y'all be safe and have fun.